Well, good morning, Grunts. Kind of got an interesting topic today, and it's kind of one that's annoying. And as you see by the title of my screen down on the bottom left, it's pay your own debts. And one thing I find interesting is, a lot of us have borrowed money in the past, whether it be for student loans, auto loans, housing, all the way down to your basic consumer credit, like your credit cards, small personal loans, everything that when you borrow money to purchase a good or service, you ultimately have to owe that money back. And the one area that's really piqued my interest is the student loan debt. We supposedly have a student loan debt crisis in the United States that our current presidential administration wants to bail. Well, I've got an article here. Let me read this article to you real quick. Pretty much the Supreme Court of the U.S. leaves debt relief on hold. Whoops. And I'm behind the times. I've been busy. I've got my own life to live. I would like to dedicate more time to creating content here, which I'm at times is difficult. But anyways, here we go. The Supreme Court has denied the Biden administration's bid to reinstate a scaled down version of its student debt relief plan. The program was paused earlier this month by a federal appeals court while it weighs the case. The latest ruling impacts about 8 million borrowers who have been in temporary forbearance and collectively owe more than $400 billion. Opponents of the plan argue it would require $475 billion in spending not authorized by Congress. After the appeals court rules on the plan's legality, the case could make its way back to the justices, which means we are not out of the woods with student loan bailouts. I want to talk about the forbearance. Okay, I believe the forbearance is for me. I had student loans before. Years ago, I went to college and had to borrow money, and when I graduated, was on a 6 month forbearance, meaning I didn't have to pay that. I didn't start making payments on that loan until after 6 months, meaning they didn't send me a bill or statement whatsoever. And so I didn't have to pay that, make any payments for the first 6 months upon graduation. And so they try to give you a 6 month, like a grace period. In other words, okay, you graduated, that gives you time to find a job, get established in such job, and then at that time you're making money, then you can start making the payments. So that's kind of what forbearance means. And then in like cases of national emergency, like we had the COVID crisis where uh, student loan lenders were putting forbearances on your student loans where you didn't have to pay on your loans throughout the COVID pandemic. Okay. And so now what we're seeing is um, I looked at the numbers. The total student loan debt in the United States right now is $1.74 trillion. Okay. And they're only looking at, and I don't know what the criteria is for a student loan bailout, but they're looking at 8 million borrowers. Well, that's a small fraction of the total number of borrowers in the United States at any given time for student loans. But right now they want to eliminate 400 billion in student loan debt among those 8 million borrowers. So it's kind of like a lottery, I guess. If you're lucky, you'll get a statement in the mail saying, "Oh, your student loan has been paid off. You don't have to worry about it anymore," which is great news if you're one of those 8 million borrowers. But at the same time, where do we think this $475 billion is coming from? It's coming from me. It's coming from the neighbors. It's coming from your friends, your family, your children. Like I've got a son that's in the Air Force, working a regular job, paying his share of taxes. He's paying on money that he never even borrowed on. So it's like, how fair is that? And it essentially is taking, you know, and I go both ways. I sway more toward well, it's individual responsibility. You borrowed that money, you have to pay it back. But then on the other side, society is pressuring these young people. You go to college, you follow the money, your heart, follow your heart, and the money will follow, kind of thing. How many times have we heard that being said? And so young people are made to believe that, well, if I go to college, I'll make a lot of money. Well, it depends on your field. It depends on what you're going to study, what you're majoring in, and what the job market looks like for that particular area. If you're going to go study and be a heart doctor or cancer doctor, well, yeah, there's money to be made there, and making that, taking on that debt would probably be a pretty good risk to take, because you're going to end up, you'll go through your med school, go through your residency. Yeah, you'll probably rack up, a couple $100,000 in debt, but you're going to get a job. You're going to work in a profession that's going to pay you a couple $100,000 a year, if not more, depending on where you practice. But if you're getting a master's degree in intergender studies or transgender studies, and you're borrowing $100,000 for a worthless degree, yeah, you're probably one of these 8 million borrowers that they're trying to bail out because you made a stupid choice. You entered into a bullshit, useless major, borrowed money for it. They, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to get me a good job. I'm going to learn to study transgender studies and blah, blah, blah. And realize there's nothing in the market for that. And you just bought and borrowed money on a worthless fucking degree. So my thing with this is it goes back to personal responsibility. Okay, you wanted to go to college like I did. I wanted to go to college years ago. I went in the Marine Corps. I busted my ass in the Marine Corps 4 years, was honorably discharged. I signed up for the Montgomery GI Bill, which I did use. And because that program, by the way, that program is so far behind that it helped. I mean, little help is better than no help, but I was getting monthly GI Bill payments that I in turn would transfer to the college. And then what was left over, I filled out the FAFSA forms like every other college student does in America. And then that starts acquiring, or that you start accruing your student loan debt that way. Okay. And so every semester, I would get a GI Bill payment, which in turn I'd hand over to the college. And then every semester they would charge or apply that remaining tuition amount and fees to my student loan. So as I was in school, that was accruing over and until I graduated. And then I think when I graduated, I had probably, I think, just under $30,000 in student loan debt, which isn't bad. But deal is, I still, being married with a couple kids in a home, I still paid that payment faithfully. And anytime they had some kind of forbearance or for whatever reason, I was still paying that payment. I'm like, no, I'm not letting that interest accrue. I'm not wanting that loan, because every time they forbear it, it pushes your final payment date out. Okay. So for every month, oh, well, you don't need to pay this month. Well, then they're pushing that out another month. Okay. You're going to pay the same amount of time on that loan per se, but it's going to stretch that time out longer. So yeah, you might make 3 years worth of payments, but it might take you 6 to 8 years to pay it off, because whatever national crisis comes up, like a pandemic, they're going to say, "Oh, yeah, don't need to pay that. We put your loan in forbearance." I've had my loan go into forbearance a couple of times while I was paying it, and because I was still gainfully employed, I could make my payments. I didn't worry about a job loss. I didn't worry about a loss in earnings or anything like that. I paid my loans because I signed the documentation with the college that I agreed to pay these back. Okay. And that's the category I fall in. That's the church I belong in. It's like, okay, I took self-responsibility. I knew and understood what I was getting into when I started going to school. I knew I was going to have debt when I got out of school. So that's on me. I didn't go complain to the government, oh, I can't pay my loans. I need a bailout. And so I never did that. I worked through most bullshit that was going on in this country. I never worried about losing a job because of some pandemic or some national crisis. I had a job all the time. And so I say it's up to the individual borrower. Hey, you signed the loan documentation. You were convinced that going to college was the only way to achieve the American dream, to get that high paying job. Well, that's not necessarily true anymore. Um, and then when you look at other ways of getting an education, a lot of companies now, and I can name a few right off the top of my head, Walmart, a lot of the big railroads are offering tuition assistance. And so, guys, I'm telling you right now, I support going to college. I'm not against education. I think education is great as long as you're getting it in a field that is in high demand. Like, I mentioned like the medical field briefly, like cancer doctors, heart doctors, those fields are in high demand. Um, to where hospitals now they actually are contracting their medical professionals. They're getting through contract medical professionals to work at their hospitals. They can't hire people fast enough to fill these roles. So they're actually taking like contractors in, contract nurses. So yeah, if you get into a field that's in high demand, yeah, I'm all about that. Going to, you want to be a registered nurse, go to college. Yeah, by all means, go to college, get your bachelor's in nursing or your master's in nursing. You're going to get a job and a pretty good paying job at that. But if you're getting a job in business or you're getting a job in some bullshit, transgender studies or whatever, basket weaving bullshit, yeah, expect to be strapped in debt and not have a job to cover that debt. And so that's that's one thing, my oldest boy, when he hired on at Walmart back as a teenager, back in high school, I was telling him, he brought home the welcome, like a welcome packet, working at Walmart. It gives you explains all their benefits, their policies, their expectations, and they had something there regarding college assistance, tuition assistance. And I told my son, I said, and I told him, I said, as long as you work at Walmart, I says, and my plan for him, and like I said, I advised him, hey, stay working at Walmart. When you graduate high school, continue working there. Let them help you pay for your education. And then if you decide Walmart is not your thing, you've got a bachelor's degree with very little debt, if any, and you go out and you start your life, the life you want to live, you start it like debt free. So, Grunts, there's ways of going to school, getting an education without getting over your head in debt. Is do your research. And problem is that, another issue I have too with college with tuition is I think it's somewhat kind of predatory. If you remember back in 2008, 2009, they talked about the predatory mortgage, uh, how mortgage lenders were predatory, how they preyed on people, how they how people were getting mortgages that really didn't qualify for them, but they were getting mortgages because they were guaranteed or promised this or that or whatever might have happened. That's kind of the same way with colleges and universities. They're preying on these students, these high school students. They got as a senior high school, they got these kids now signing their fucking FAFSA forms in high school and as seniors about to graduate. You go out and you go out and you go school shopping essentially, but you're not buying pencils and pens. You're looking at the colleges you want to go to, or you want to go to UNO or UNL or UNK, or maybe you want to go to somewhere in Iowa or South Dakota or Colorado or wherever, you're out there looking at the different schools. You want to go out there and see what opportunities are out there for you. Does this school have my program? Does this college have this program? Can I complete my whole degree plan at UNO, for example, or do I have to take part of it here and then I got to transfer all that to University of Colorado, for example? So that's what I mean by school shopping. But when you get locked into a college, you've been accepted to go to University of Nebraska Omaha, for example, and then as a senior, you start filling out your tuition, you start filling out your lending paperwork. Usually it's your FAFSA, and so you're doing all that as a senior in high school. So by the time you graduate high school, you're locked in. Okay, you enjoy your summer, and then you show up to your first day of school at UNO. They've already credited your loan account this amount of dollars for tuition and housing, and then you do that for the next 4 to 8 years, depending on what you're studying. And by the time you graduate, boom, you got your tally. It could be $50,000, it could be 100,000, or it could be higher. And so you're kind of starting out in the red when you graduate, which to me is not a good thing to do. And then when you're on top of that, you look at how wages have been so stagnant over the last 15, 20 years, where inflation, and it's including tuition, when the cost, inflation goes up and up and up and up, but your wages are staying flat. And so when you're freshly graduated, freshly degreed individual, and you got $100,000 in student loan debt, and you got to start at the bottom of some corporation making 35, 40, $45,000. And now you got to try to figure out how to live, because now you got 6 months forbearance on your student loans. So now you're working, and now you got to figure out your living, your transportation, you got to pay utilities, groceries, what have you, your everyday living expenses. And all of a sudden that 6 months comes along, you get your first statement for that student loan bill, and it's, $700-800 a month. And you're like, holy shit. That's the shock young people are getting right now, is they're realizing, oh crap, I can't afford to live like this. And they can't. But again, I go back to it's personal responsibility. Who made the choice ultimately? Yeah, society says, well, little Johnny, Tanner, you can't succeed unless you go to college. So then these guys are brainwashed and programmed into believing, no, college is the only way. When they could have graduated high school, went to work somewhere that offers tuition assistance or a college program, join the military. Military is a paid trade school. That's what my oldest boy is doing down in Texas. He's in the Air Force, learning a skill, learning a trade. Guess what? He doesn't owe money on it. Uncle Sam is paying for it, and they pay him on top of it. So it's like, you got no reason to sit here and get suckered into believing that, well, if I go to college, the money will follow. Well, no, that's not true. You're going to go to college, the debt will follow. That is true. So think about that, guys. You got to make your decisions. You got to do your homework, plan and think about what you're doing before you do it. Don't let mom and dad convince you, oh, this is the only way to go, when there are other avenues to take to success. I was big on college. I was kind of on my oldest one. I got to, go to college. He was a smart young man. And when he was of that age, like junior, senior high school, go to college, do this, figure out what you want to do, have a plan, go to college. So I was pretty surprised when he came to me and said, well, I want to join the military. And that tells me that's a young man, boy, that's did his work, that done his homework. Hey, how can I navigate my early adulthood without getting into debt trying to achieve my goal? And so I was surprised, but I was also very happy that he chose the military. So I'm thinking, well, yeah, you go to the Air Force, learn a skill. And then I also told him, well, while you're there, grab a bachelor's degree. The Air Force will pay for that. Get the certifications in your field, get a degree, and then at any point you're like, well, I don't need the Air Force anymore. I can get out, finish up my current enlistment, and move on, and do it being debt free because he's going to be well ahead of his peers. He's going to be well ahead of his former high school classmates that went to college, that signed the FAFSA forms as a senior, as a co-parents or co-signing this stuff too. He's going to get out, go to the Air Force. If he makes a career, that's great. If he don't, he's going to be well ahead because he's going to be like, got no debt. I don't have a huge student loan following me all over. So think about that, guys, before you commit to something like this, because now this is complete and utter bullshit here that I, along with the rest of you guys that pay taxes, are going to be potentially bailing out 8 million borrowers. $475 billion. That money's got to come from somewhere. So who do you think it comes from? Me, you, everybody else that pays taxes, that works hard, pays their share of taxes. So essentially, I'm paying for the neighbor's student loan. That's not my responsibility. That's hers. That's his, not mine. So with that being said, guys, enjoy the rest of your day. I've got plenty on my plate. Sorry for the lack of content. It's not a lack of content, it's been a lack of time. The open water season is over here in Nebraska. I've got to pull the boat into the car wash here, get it washed and winterized. I'm heading down to Texas on Thursday here in 4 days. So I'll work a few more days, take 5 days vacation, go to Texas, see my boy down in Abilene. Just got a lot going on right now, guys. So I apologize for the lack of content. So I'm going to work on that. I'm going to take my camera and my laptop down to Texas. And when my boy's working, he works afternoons down there in the hangar. And so I can edit and get content put out and create content as well. So you'll see some stuff coming from Texas over the next week or two. So like I said, grunts, have a great day, and we'll catch you on the next one. Toodles.